I have applied for 70 credit cards, and these are my 9 lessons learned. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Novarise, your channel for financial education. So today we're going to talk about my journey applying for 70 credit cards, if not more, and the lessons that I learned throughout the entire journey so that you can learn a little bit from them and hopefully not make the same mistakes that I did. So without further ado, let's get started with point number 1. So the very first thing that I actually learned from this entire journey was that if I apply for a credit card with more than a 700 in my FICO, that I will actually end up with a better APR. So for those who don't know what an APR means, an APR stands for annual percentage rate. So it works very similar to a mortgage. The higher your FICO, the higher the interest rates that the banks are going to give you. So an APR, it's basically the interest that your credit card it's going to charge your debt. So just to share a bit of an anecdote, a couple of years ago, when I just started in this whole adventure about applying for credit cards and trying to understand how things work and all of that stuff, I actually went for a Freedom card, a Chase Freedom card. And my FICO score at the time was a 680. And because I have a 680, the APR that I wind up with in this card was a whopping 23.74%, right? But then fast forward a couple of years, I learned a little bit more about this whole deal. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to wait for my FICO to go up a little bit more. And I waited for it to reach a 705. And by then, I went ahead and I applied for a Chase Sapphire. So the rate that I actually got in the Chase Sapphire was for 19.99%. And I know that when you look at 19.99 and 23.74, it might not seem that much of a big difference, but it does when you have a debt of like thousands and thousands of dollars. So long story short, just simply, if you can, wait for you to get a higher FICO score so you can lock in a better rate from the get-go. Yes, I know there are tricks that you can implement that can help you lower your APR. Let's say, for example, if you came in and you're watching this video for the first time, but you have a car that was, open 5 years ago and you're still stuck in this side of the equation and you're trying to see, hey, can I lower or am I married to this rate? No, you're not married to this rate. There are a couple of things that you can do to bring it down, but that will be a topic for another episode. Okay. And for those who have been following us for quite some time, you'll probably wonder, yeah, but what happened with the 0 APR? Why are you getting us at 2374 when you can get 0 APRs? Well, the 0 APRs come from these very same cards, right? In fact, Freedom over here is notoriously known for offering 0% balance transfers from time to time. Okay. That means that every once in a while, even if you get a card with an APR at 23.74%, every once in a while, you're going to get a letter in the mail or, some type of email notification telling you, hey, we have this promotion going on right here that you can actually, take advantage of by transferring, debt from another credit card with high rates into our card. And then you won't have to pay, any interest whatsoever because you're in a 0% promotional deal. So that's when you swoop in and you take advantage of the 0% credit cards. Now, moving along, and let's go on to lesson number 2. So the best way to increase your FICO score is not necessarily paying off the debt. In fact, the best way to increment your FICO is by simply asking for a line increase in your credit card. Okay? Why? Well, it's very simple. Let's just think about it this way. Let's say, for example, and let's just pay attention to this chart or this graph right here. Let's assume this is the pie chart for the FICO score, right? So the FICO is composed of like multiple elements, but we're going to talk about 2 key ones that are very important for you to pay attention. One is debt, right? So 30% of your FICO is composed of the amount of debt that you owe. And then 35 of it, it's composed of timely payments, okay? So remember what I said about the best way to increment your FICO score is not by paying your debt. By that, I'm not saying that you shouldn't pay. You should always pay your debt. Otherwise, 35% of your FICO score is going to be impacted. This point right here, it's focusing on the line increase, which is the 30% that you see here. Why does that matter? Okay, well, let's just come over here. So let's say, for example, that you have a credit card debt of $5,000, right? But then your total credit line, it's also $5,000. What does that mean? That means that you have used up 100% of your credit line. That does not look good. The banks don't like it, and your FICO score is certainly not like that. And therefore, your FICO score is going to go down. But most people tend to want to tackle this number right here, right? The $5,000 debt. Let me go ahead and tackle it and, get another job and pay it off and stuff like that. So that way I can just bring up my FICO. But there's another way that can help you increase it without having you to, just break your back, getting another job and stuff like that, or like going crazy about it. And that's just simply by getting a line increase. Because when you get a line increase, this is how your debt is going to look like. So let's look at this scenario. So let's say you still have your debt for $5,000, right? But now, because you know this trip, you went ahead and you called the bank and you were able to get a line increase of $15,000, right? So now this $5,000 credit line went up to $15,000. And that translates to only a 30% use of your debt. Or 33% to be exact, for those who want to get the exact calculation, right? So you didn't have to work extra hard. You didn't have to, borrow money to pay it down. You just simply asked for an line increase. And just that got you the highest FICO score. Now, moving along, and let's talk about lesson number 3. And lesson number 3 has a lot to do with point number 2 right here, right? So the best way to ask for a credit line increase is to do it when only a soft pull is in place, okay? Not when a hard pull is in place. So for those who are hearing about this for the first time, a hard pull is one that appears in your credit report, like in your face, and it's one that also lowers your FICO score, right? So that's what it's called, a hard pull, and it typically lowers your FICO score by 2 to 3 points or something like that, right? But then when we're talking about a soft pull, it does appear in your report, but it's more on like the side, right? Like it's not in your face, and it doesn't impact your FICO. It means your FICO remains the same. So when you're going to go and call a bank and request for a credit line increase, the best way to go about it is by asking if the line increase can be done with a soft pull. You never want to go with a hard pull, okay? So that's a big no-no. So let's say, for example, let's do an exercise right here. Let's say that you find out about this trick and you want to go ahead and implement it. So you take your credit card out, you look at the 1-800 number in the back, and you call them. And so the conversation will go like this, right? Hello, ma'am. How are you? I hope you're doing great. The reason why I'm calling is because I would like to request a line increase, and I was kind of hoping that that line increase could be done with a soft pull. And then you pause right there. And then you let the rep talk on the phone, and then she will probably say, well, sir, unfortunately, we cannot do that. The only way to give you a line increase is by pulling your credit, so that will require a hard pull. Well, at that point in time, you're going to thank them for their time and then just simply hang up, move on. That's not the right bank you want to work with. You're going to take out another credit card, and then you're going to run through the same script, and you're going to ask them if it's possible to increase your credit line using a soft pull. And if they say yes, voila, you already got your increase. You ask for how much you want. I typically do 50% more. So if your credit line is $7,000, I ask for an additional $3,500. That's just the golden rule that has worked for me. Anything higher than that, I never tend to get. So why bother? So I usually ask for 50% of my standard credit line. And that usually works out. So now you know, and hopefully you can implement that as well. Now, moving on to point number 4, or lesson number 4, right? So what I learned is that buying real estate with credit cards, it's actually cheaper, way cheaper than using an actual mortgage, okay? And think about it this way. Mortgage have closing costs, right? And closing costs are not cheap. They're usually very expensive. So when you use a credit card to, buy real estate, yes, you have to pay for transaction fees and stuff like that to pull the liquidity out of the card. But remember, there are credit cards that are at 0% APR. And we do that a lot. We implement those a lot. In fact, there is an episode that I released a couple of weeks ago that I talk about exactly that. I made a comparison between using funds from an actual mortgage, paying the closing costs, and doing the same thing with a credit card. And I was able to prove everybody that the credit cards have much lower fees than going through the traditional route, which is the mortgage. So make sure you check it out after we're done with this video. Okay. Now, moving along, the fifth lesson that I learned is that you never, okay, pay your bills with cash, right? You always want to do it with credit card. So let's say that you have a construction business, right? Let's say you're looking to buy a couple of wood beams, maybe 2-3 bags of cement and stuff like that. And the whole bill came up to be $3,000. Typically, most people will grab their wallet and pull out cash just to pay for that $3,000, right? But in Novarise, we don't do that. What we do is that we take the credit card to pay for that $3,000 bill. And then we take the cash and we later pay for the credit card. Now, some of you might be thinking, but then why go through that hassle? Like I can just simply pay it off by cash and then that's it. Why deal with the credit cards? Well, you get a lot of benefits by using your credit card. Number one, you obviously are building your credit. But aside from building your credit, there's something else that is very important for you to consider. And that is the accumulation of points. We love points. Every time you use your credit card to pay a bill, you rack up a lot of points. We have, thanks to those points, we have travel for free. We have rented cars for free. Okay. We have even pay our staff salary for free. Because what happens when you get points? You can actually exchange those points for cash back. You can actually get cash when you get those points. So like the points are not just sitting there doing nothing. You can actually exchange those points for cash back. So let's say, for example, you're a little bit more traditional and you say, you know what? I don't want to deal with travel. I don't care about the car that I get to rent. And I certainly don't care about paying my staff with salary because, hey, I got cash on my own, whatever. So what about if I help you see things a little bit different? Let's say that instead of using those points to do all these activities over here on the left, you take these points, you exchange them for cash back, and with that cash back, you pay the debt on your credit card. That's the true definition, the true practice of applying the concept of OPM, others people's money. Very important in real estate. And this is a concept that we've been talking over and over and over again. And it's great. And you should definitely implement that. Now, moving along to the next point. But before we do that, if you're enjoying this episode, let me remind you to hit the like button right here at the bottom so you can help this episode rank and help others like you who are looking for information of this kind. Now, point number 6, the lesson number 6, better said, it has to do with administration. Okay. Now, if you think about it, when you have 70 credit cards, it's very difficult to manage them because most likely you didn't get approved for all 70 credit cards in one day. You got them approved over a period of, I don't know, months, sometimes even years, right? So when that happens, you typically don't have the same due date. Some credit cards are due the 1st of the month. Some credit cards are due the 3rd, the 5th, the 6th of the month. And trying to pay that credit card debt separately for each and one of your cards will become a mess because it's very, very likely that you will forget to pay at least 1 or 2 of them, right? So you definitely don't want to put yourself in that situation. So what I like to do is that I move all of my due dates in the credit cards. And for those who don't know what a due date is basically the date where you have to pay. Okay. So I move all my due dates to the 27th of each month. And then on the 27th, I block an hour or 2 and I pay all my credit cards. Okay. So that way I make sure that all my credit cards on the list are all taken care of. And that way I don't have to worry whether one was late or not paid or whatsoever. Right. Now, moving on to point number 7, and that has a lot to do with point 6, right? And that is automated payments. Okay. Always set up automatic payments for your credit cards because Life happens. Life catches up to you. You can be the most organized person in the world and you can sit down and jot down in your agenda or your calendar that, hey, on the 27th, I'm always going to pay my car. But life happens. It sometimes throws curveballs at us and we have surprises. We have things that we did not foresee. And sometimes it takes our attention away from having to pay the credit card. And so having an automatic payment for at least the minimum amount, it's going to save your credit from going downhill because, hey, remember this table right here. Timely payments is 35% of your FICO score. So make sure you pay attention to that. Okay. So how do you know exactly what's the minimum amount? What do you pay? Yada, yada. Well, every time you go into your bank application, there's a minimum amount that is automated by the system. So all you got to do is just to simply activate the automatic payment and all your cards get paid. Just to give you an example of what happened to me a couple of months ago, because I'm actually on the road a lot. I have been traveling a lot for business, and there's been instances where I have forgotten a couple of times to pay my credit card. But thanks to this, my credit is still spotless. Let's say, for example, that out of that 70 credit cards that I talked about in the title, we're going to do an exercise with 3. So you have credit card 1, credit card 2, and then credit card 3. So on credit card 1, the minimum payment generated by the system is $35. The minimum payment on the second card, let's say it's $70, and then the minimum payment of the third is $50, right? So on the 27th, the system religiously charged $35, $70, and $50. I'm good. I don't have to worry about it. And everything has been taken care of. However, the debt is still there, right? I'm pretty sure that if you guys have a minimum payment of some sort, 75, 70, or 50, you call it whatever, it is very likely that your debt is actually higher than that amount. So let's say, for example, on these cars, my debt on this car was 500, on this one was 3,000, and then on this one was, I don't know, 6,000 or something like that. I'm just making numbers up. So yes, the auto payment did take place, but I want to reduce my debt even further by tackling this part. So I let the automated payment happen. And then down the road, hey, I remember like, oh my God, yeah, I actually want to reduce this even further. So then I manually come in and I start taking care of the debt. So let's say I completely paid off this car. I pay $465 because the 35 minimum payment already took place. So now this is completely taken care of. Maybe this car, I want to pay an additional $500. And then on this one, I want to pay an additional $500. So that way I'm actually lowering the debt on my credit cards. Yes, it might seem a little bit complicated. You're probably wondering, hey, why would you do this when you can actually just come in and do the manual payments? Yes, I know I can do that. But the reason why I'm setting up automatic payment is because I want to make sure that the payments are always made on time, even if I'm going to do a manual payment. But if you do the automated payment and you make sure it goes through every time, even on the days that you're having, I don't know, the worst days and something catches your attention, at least you're not going to hurt your FICO, okay? Deal with the drama on your own, but let automation take care of your FICO. Okay, now moving along, and that's to lesson number 8, and it has to do with mortgage applications. Okay, I know that you probably heard about the famous 30%, right? And that whole 30% thing has created a lot of confusion in people. I've actually read a lot of comments from people saying, hey, well, you're not supposed to use more than 30% of your credit because it's impacting your credit in a negative way, yada, yada. Well, let me tell you something. The 30% derive from mortgages, okay? So it is recommended that when you are going to apply for mortgages, it is recommended that you ensure that all your credit card debt is under the 30%, okay? That's where the whole 30% came from. It doesn't mean that you're not supposed to use 30% because remember, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So for those consumers out there who are using only 30% of their credit and they're not using anything else, think about it twice because if you don't use it, the banks are going to come in and they're going to take it away from you. So make sure, okay, make sure that you are very well aware of the differences. By that, I'm not saying that you should always max out your credit cards. There are ways to use more than 30% of your credit line in a responsible way. And for those who are actually interested in learning how to do that, here's a video right here on the screen that you can actually check out later on. And don't worry, the descriptions are going to be made available down in the description box below for you to check out. But in that video, I actually teach you how you can actually use more than the 30%, not having to worry about the 30%, because there are ways to do it the right way without impacting your FICO. Okay, so back to this class. If you have plans to apply for one, make sure that your credit card debt is under the 30%. Why? Because the lenders want to make sure that you're responsible with it. They don't want to have to compete with the credit cards. They want to make sure that, hey, if they're going to give you money to buy real estate, that you can actually pay them back. And if they're seeing that you're owing over 30%, they will most likely not want to deal with you, or maybe they won't lend you enough money because, hey, one, they're competing with the credit cards. And then two, that's not a good reflection on your financial history. They're probably thinking that you don't know how to manage that, right? So don't let that happen to you. And now, point number 9, which also has to do with mortgages, right? If you have plans to apply for a mortgage, make sure you do not, you do not touch your credit whatsoever in the next 120 days or 4 months. I think that's the equivalent of it, right? So let's say, for example, you're thinking about getting a mortgage in June, right? You saw a house that you liked, or maybe let's say you're packaging all your paperwork, your taxes, you're putting all your savings together, you want to go buy a house, and your plan is to do it somewhere around in June. So that means that February and on, you're not going to do anything. You can do whatever is it that you want to do with your credit, but by February, your credit has to be spotless. You have to keep everything under the 30% rate. You are not going to rack up any new cars. You do not touch it, okay? You do not apply for any new credit lines, because the lender is going to watch everything you did in March, April, May, and June itself. They're going to look back this entire time to make sure that you didn't apply for any credit lines, that you didn't, rack up crazy debt and stuff like that. You want to keep it clean, because if they see that you pulled up another credit card, chances are they're going to want an explanation, and those are not nice. It is doable, but you're creating unnecessary work for yourself. And on top of that, they might think that you're having trouble handling your finances because you had to go and apply for another credit card. So make sure you don't do that, okay? Now, it is the time for you to check a new episode, and it is this one right here on the side. And this episode will help you complement everything you just learned today on this one. And until then, I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.